Hey guys, Mike here. I'm going to do a quick video and show you guys how I make my multi-piece removable handle scales. I've had a few guys online message me and ask me about how I do it. And when I mean multi-piece, I mean the different sections of material spaced off. This one's carbon fiber with blue G10 liners and spacers. And I do all the chamfering by hand, and in the video I'll show you exactly how I do that, how I countersink the holes, and how I do all the glue up. I think I might make a 3-part series. I get all my standoffs and screws from McMaster-Carr. I'll leave a link in the description. This one's black G10 with white and black G10 in the middle and black and white G10 liners. As you can see, that's what I mean by doing the chamfers around the edges. I think it gives it a really nice two-tone effect when it's done right. Another example is this desert tan G10 with black G10 liners and spacers. Once you figure out how to do the multi-piece handles, there's so many different materials you can work with, so your possibilities are endless because you can mix and match so many different things. You can use different colors, different materials, your options are endless. And I'll show you guys exactly how to do that, and let's get to her, guys. Okay guys, first thing we're going to do is make the middle section of the handle with the 2 liners. I'd also like to say that I'm not a professional at this. I'm still learning. I've only done this a handful of times. But like I said, I had a few guys ask me about it, so I figured I'd make a video and share with you what I've learned so far. Okay, so you guys are going to need your materials. I'm using black G10 with green G10 liners. And I like to make my space in the middle about 3/4 of an inch. So you're going to take a scribe or whatever you mark your stuff off with and measure out your piece about 3.5 to 4 inches long and mark it across. And then we're going to take it over to the bandsaw and cut it out. You guys can cut it with whatever you guys use, like an angle grinder, a hacksaw, whatever you guys cut your materials with. You're also going to want to make 2/4 inch scribes over here for your spacers that are going to go on the sides, because the material is a little bit smaller than 1/4 inch, but you want to have some to play with just in case it shifts when you're using the epoxy. So you would mark off 2 pieces because you're using on 2 different sides, and we're going to cut those out also over at the bandsaw. Whenever you cut G10 or work with it, you're going to want to wear a respirator. This stuff's really toxic. We're going to cut out those 2 little strips first. They're just 1/4 inch wide. And we're just going to epoxy them on the sides like that. I'm using the Milwaukee deep cut portaband with the off-road swag table, if anyone was wondering. We're going to go over and knock these burrs off and clean everything up and get it scratched up so we can do the epoxy. Okay guys, before we do the glue up, we're going to have to make the edges on this part dead flat, so when we do the glue up and everything it fits nice and flush. And also when we split this in half and use this for 2 different sides of the handles, you want everything to meet up nice and even, so we have to have this part measuring right across the same. And you can use a granite plate and a piece of sandpaper, and you just go back and forth and keep measuring until you have the part flat. But I have a 9-inch variable speed disc grinder that I've been using, and it just speeds things up. So I'll bring you over there and I'll show you guys how I do it. I'm just going to glue some 220 grit black ice sandpaper. I got some repositional 75 3M spray adhesive from True Grit. Little Windex. You want to keep just measuring your part. See, I gotta take more off that side still. I still need to take a little off this side. They're getting pretty close. Okay, you're going to need epoxy and some parchment paper. First thing you're going to have to do is rough the edges up so the epoxy has something to stick to. I've already done that, I'm just showing you guys what to do. And you're going to want to rough up these two sides, which I've already done on the disc grinder. And you're going to need your epoxy. I'm using this stuff from True Grit. It's 30-minute. But it takes 24 hours to cure. Okay, we're going to mix our epoxy up. Make sure it's really mixed up good. Just put her on the piece. Make sure you use a lot. Use the parchment paper so the epoxy doesn't stick. And we'll bring this over to the vise. Make sure everything's lined up nice and even. And that's pretty much it. While we're waiting for that to dry, we'll get the other pieces ready. Okay, we're gonna have to cut out the rest of the handle. And for an example here, that's the spacer we're doing. And so we're gonna have to cut out these two end pieces. I scribed off the lines already. We're gonna need this the size of your handle, however long your handle is. And it's also gonna give us some room to play with because that spacer is gonna go in there and it's gonna stretch it out a bit. We can also cut out the liner that's going to go on the bottom, so it's going to have to be the length and the width as this whole piece, right from the end to the end, with the piece that we cut out too. Okay, we'll take it over to the bandsaw and I'm going to cut this out. Okay, we got everything cut out. These two pieces of the handle are going to be epoxied onto this liner with the spacer in between. So we're going to need these two surfaces nice and flat. So you can either do that with the sandpaper and the granite block going back and forth and then keep checking. But I'm going to take it over to the disc grinder again. Another way to grind those edges nice and flat is with the belt grinder, and use a 1-2-3 block and some kind of shim that's flat on both sides and parallel, and you put that shim up against your flat platen and your 1-2-3 block up against that, and you're going to need some kind of clamp to hold it down and make sure everything's nice and tight when you go to clamp. And now you pull your shim out, and we can use this as a guide. You just hold it against the 1-2-3 block and just grind your part nice and flat. And I'll show you guys exactly how that works. You just want to make sure you keep your part nice and tight against the 1-2-3 block and the tool rest. You want to keep checking your parts and making sure those edges are nice and flat and there's no gaps along the bottom. You want to keep checking both parts. Just those two edges are what really matters right now. Okay, it's been 24 hours, so the spacer's ready to go. I'm gonna have to take it over and clean it up either on the granite plate with sandpaper, or I'm gonna use the disc grinder again. You just want to have everything nice and flat on both sides, so when we do the rest of the glue up, it fits up nice and flush. You want to make sure these two green spacers are nice and flush with the piece on both sides, so we'll flatten her out. More Windex. And wear your respirator. Okay, now we got that piece nice and flat, so when we put it on here and do the glue up, everything's nice and even. So now what we need to do is rough all the edges up that are going to be glued, the bottoms, this whole piece of liner. We'll do that with the sandpaper by hand. You just want to rough it up so the epoxy has something to hold on to. It makes it a lot stronger, a stronger bond. Okay, you want to make sure these are nice and flat, no epoxy stuck on there. I like to use my small wheel tool rest that I got from DD Work Rest. I just put it in my vise. And then I like to use the parchment paper so nothing sticks to it. And we're going to clamp the handles down onto it. We'll mix the epoxy right on the liner. You're going to want to use a lot here. This one's thicker. Doesn't spread out as fast. I like to use these long toothpicks to spread my epoxy. Make sure you spread it really good, or you mix it really well. Make sure you get epoxy on all the sides. quite a bit of squeeze out. Okay, you're going to need your parchment paper on top so the clamps don't stick. I like to clamp the spacer first thing. And you want to keep checking that everything's lined up and it's not sliding around. You want to put these clamps on top. Just don't clamp too hard because the part can move. And do it on both sides. And then you can tighten these ones down. You just want to keep checking and make sure everything's nice and tight and everything's all lined up. Nothing's coming off. Everything's nice and tight. I'm sure there's better ways to clamp this down. This is just kind of what I came up with, and it works. Alright guys, we'll come back in 24 hours. Alright guys, it's been 24 hours, so we can take these clamps off. Oh yeah, I took the rubber feet off the ends of these. It holds the piece a lot better. Once we get all these clamps off, we can cut the piece in half. Then we'll have our two sides to the handle, and we can clean everything up. We got a lot of squeeze out that we can clean up, make the sides nice and flush. But it looks like everything came out nice and tight. Okay, I'm just going to cut her right in half. Alright, we got our two halves, and I'm going to have to take it over and clean the edges up. I'll do that on the belt sander, and then I'm going to have to clean all the epoxy and everything else off. You can do that on the granite plate like I said with the sandpaper, but I'm going to do it with the disc grinder for the sake of the video. It would take quite a while for me to do it with the granite block and the sandpaper. but you get great results. So let's go do that. We're going to have to clean all the epoxy off here, make everything nice and flat. And you can do that on a granite plate with sandpaper, just going back and forth, or doing figure eights. But this is just a quicker way to do it. Alright guys, that's pretty much it for this video. On the next video, I'll show you guys how to drill the pinhole so everything lines up nice and even. And we'll shape the handles. And I'll show you guys how I do 256 removable handle scales, what screws and standoffs I use. And also, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a third video where I'll show you guys how I chamfer the edges and some finishing touches. But until then guys, have a good one.